Hello there. Welcome to, I guess you'd call it the emergency bunker. Is that what we're calling this? So let me just turn my mic volume down a little bit. That's a bit better. Yeah, so I am on the western coast of Croatia. I apologize right off the bat for what I said in the video I uploaded earlier where I said we were in eastern Croatia. My brain is scrambled, unfortunately, at the moment, viewers. So, no, it's western Croatia, in a part of Croatia called Istria. Very lovely part, basically near the borders with Slovenia and Italy. And most importantly, 111 miles away from where we live, where the whole thing happened. I still don't really know how I'm going to do this live stream because, to be honest, I'm still processing what happened and it's still difficult for me to talk about it. But what I'm hoping is that by doing it in live stream form, I can be prompted by people's comments or questions, and we'll maybe do it that way. I do have one or two videos and maps to show you because I realise it can be a bit confusing as to where things are happening and that sort of thing. So we'll get to that. Just thank you so much to everyone for their outpouring of support and solidarity. It really means so much. Deanna and I are overwhelmed, really. It's in times of tragedy when you see people's true colours, for better or worse, and we've seen a few bad examples of what people's true colours are, but we've also seen many, many shining examples of humanity in this situation. Where do I begin? So many comments coming through. 425 currently watching. I'm streaming as well on Twitch and Facebook, so welcome if you're watching on Twitch or Facebook. So yes, I don't really know. Sorry, I'm a bit frazzled. This is going badly. I'll press on. The show must go on. Thank you. There's a simple thing I can do. Thank Ustod and podcast on Jehovah's Witness. It's terrible what has happened in Petrinja. Good to hear that you and your family are safe, Lloyd. Thank you so much indeed. And thank you for your super chat. And I notice another super chat has just come through from Rianne. Thank you very much indeed. Lots of love and support, Lloyd and Deanna. A word on super chats. I obviously am very, very grateful for them. They do help a great deal with the channel, particularly on videos like this that cannot be monetized. I mean, this is talking about a recent tragedy in which lives were lost. So it's never going to have ads on it. All I would say is that in this situation, I don't mind if you want to send a super chat through, then fantastic. But if you want more of your money to reach us, because YouTube takes a huge chunk of the super chat, there is a PayPal in the description, and I don't normally share the PayPal, or do I? Do I share I think the PayPal might be on videos. I'm sorry. But I don't try and make a big fuss about the PayPal because, to be completely honest with you, the support I'm receiving on Patreon at the moment is just phenomenal. So there's currently 600 patrons supporting my work, and the interest in my channel has been ramping up in recent months to the extent where I've expanding our operations, expanding the studio or whatever's left of it by the end of all this. And we're in a position where we can start dreaming big, but of course this has come along. But my point is that we're in a far, far stronger position to withstand this situation than most of our neighbours and most of the people who live where we live. I just want to make that abundantly clear. So I've put the PayPal there because we have received lots of people saying, look, we want to help. How do we help? And it seems kind of ungrateful to not allow people to help when, frankly, even though the channel's doing well, we just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we're currently staying in an Airbnb. We're going to be here until January 8th. And then we don't know what's happening next. We're even talking today about finding a rental property for a few months, because what we've been hearing is that the tectonic activity in Croatia isn't likely to stop anytime soon. Before I came on, I asked Deanna to check on her app. She has like an app that's telling her what strength of earthquake is happening, and it's a real-time display. 43 quakes in just today. So today being New Year's Day, 1st of January 2020. One of which, let me just bring the stats up, close the screen down. One of which was 3.8 and two of which were 3.6. Yeah, two 3.6 and one 3.8 today. So it's an ongoing situation. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I can't say hand on heart whether the bunker will be there by the end of this. We've closed the door on the bunker and abandoned it. We've abandoned our house, more crucially, because we need our house to live. We've just left it all behind. We're refugees from a natural disaster, and we don't know what's happening. Again, we are in a far stronger position to be refugees than most people in that situation and in that vicinity. It is a part of Croatia where, quite frankly, there are lots of people with not much money. And whereas I've been able to get everyone in the car, and a friend of ours very kindly brought my in-laws, who were initially reluctant to leave, not everyone can do that. Not everyone can just fill their tank with fuel and go to an Airbnb. So everything I say when it comes to helping me, heavy caveat, and I speak for Deanna as well, that yes, there's some uncertainty, yes, there's some fear on our part. Will we come out of this? What's going to happen? Are we going to have a home to go to? But we consider ourselves extremely, extremely fortunate compared to the majority of people from the area in which we live. More super chats coming through. Thank you so much indeed to Alexandra the Great. Was that going to show? You are not alone. You did amazing work waking up so many people. You will build another bunker. Thank you. Hopefully, I'm really hoping I don't need to build another bunker, because the original bunker is fine and I love it. It's one of the best things ever. But thank you very much for that message. I'm just scrolling up, mindful that there are 600 people now watching. Good grief. Mormon Jesus 69420, my favourite of the Jesuses, it must be said. Some help towards rebuilding after the earthquake. Glad your family is safe. That's so kind. Thank you very much indeed. I think there might have been a few others. You and your family are safe, mate. If there is any help I can give from Australia. I think there might have been a glitch there. I apologise. Thank you very much, Aussie Outdoor Blokes. And if I scroll up more, I think there's another one. I don't want to miss people. Thank you so much, Alistair, for your super chat. And yeah, I can see others as well. There's one here from Lisa Burberry. Lloyd, good to hear you and family are okay. My heart goes out to the victims. Hoping 2021 is a better year for all of us. Hugs. Thank you very much, Lisa. So yeah, what I've got prepared. Oh, good grief, Jeremy Davis. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you so much, and to you, Gina, as well. That's very much appreciated. Oh, and more, and Tommy as well. Thank you. Let me show you. I'm going to get them. To be honest, I'm going to get the most traumatic thing out, because talking about this whole thing is actually, now that I'm doing it, difficult. I don't want to say I need therapy, but it has affected me. So, but there is a video I wanted to show you just to help you understand. And it's done the rounds on social media, so I apologise if you've already seen it. But let me get this video showing, and it might take me a few seconds because I'm rubbish at these horrendous screen share things. I think this might be it. Share. Yeah, I think this is the one. Now, this is a video in which I think the mayor of Petrinja is addressing the media after there has already been 2 smaller earthquakes, one of which was, I think, 5.3 or thereabouts. So there were 2 smaller earthquakes on the 28th, and then the one that everyone's talking about, the 6.3, 6.4, was on the 29th. And it was while the mayor was giving a press conference or a media presentation about the first 2 earthquakes that the big earthquake hit. So let me play this video.
U interesu. Dobre.
Now, hopefully, you can hear the audio there. I can't hear the audio properly. Just indicate. In fact, if someone could just indicate whether you've heard the audio. Is there audio or is there not audio? Right, okay. Let me just pause that. We can hear the audio. Again, I've not set this up properly. So in the audio, you obviously hear the sound of the earthquake. The sound alone is terrifying. It's this slow, rumbling, deep noise that is everywhere. I mean, usually when you hear a noise, the noise is coming from somewhere. It's kind of directional, you know? But when it's an earthquake, the noise is all around you because it is literally everywhere. And so there's that noise, and then you'll hear the kind of panicked reactions. So you hear people saying, mir, which means calm down. Dobra, which means it's fine. You know, people frantically trying to grapple with the situation and calm people, even though they are themselves terrified. And the jolting that you see there, that's how it was when it struck. And I was in the bunker at the time. Ironically, I was replying to a tweet about the previous earthquake, or earthquakes, because there were 2, where someone was responding. It was Navadia, another YouTuber, who was saying, what's this about them going on for months? And I was saying, yeah, no, apparently it's a thing. And I think I'd literally just pressed send or whatever it is on Twitter. And then the earthquake struck. The whole bunker, let me just close this down. The whole bunker starts shaking violently. I was sat at my desk without my slippers on because I just had them resting on the chair, and I was in such a hurry to get out that I didn't even stop to think, where are my slippers? I just ran outside in my socks onto the grass, and at that moment my mother-in-law was also in the garden. She must have been getting wood from the woodshed or something, looking absolutely terrified. And everything's happening in kind of split seconds. But I remember turning round and seeing my house jolting violently in front of me. And you don't expect to see a building do that. You look at a building, and buildings are generally stable things. You don't think in terms of them dancing around in front of you. But I was looking at this building knowing that my wife and 2 children were inside, and my father-in-law. And that was, I don't want to talk about that too much, but that was a genuinely terrifying thing. Probably one of the most terrifying things ever that's happened to me. And for a moment there, I froze because I genuinely did not know what to do. I didn't know where my children were. I didn't know which part of the building my children were in order for me to run in and get them. And while I was still processing this, my mother-in-law said, "There's Jessica," because she could see from her angle that Jessica was emerging. So I quickly ran to the door and grabbed Jessica and brought her out. And around that time, Deanna was emerging with Julia. And so then we were all out, thankfully, because Jessica had been brought out by her grandfather. We were all outside, and I think it was still shaking a little bit, but the main jolts were over. So that we were just kind of dazed, and we quickly realised, well, we can't be in the building, because we knew there would be aftershocks. In fact, this was now the 3rd noticeable earthquake that we'd experienced within the last day or so. So we got the car running and took it over the road, because there's a playground over the road, and we were on the playground for, I'm going to say, maybe 90 minutes or thereabouts, an hour or 2 hours we were there. Considering how terrified Jessica had been when I grabbed her, she very quickly acclimatized to the playground, because she got to sit in the back of my car with her friend who, lives in the same row of houses. And I think she even started to enjoy the experience a little bit, because all of a sudden we were camped out and she was in the back of our car, and she was just being with her friend, who she doesn't get to see a great deal of ordinarily because of COVID. And I'm going to get onto that more later. So we were over the road on a playground and trying to assess what was going on. I think there were a few smaller tremors while we were there, and we were just basically trying to figure things out, I think. And then at some point, Deanna said, "I think we should go." And I was like, "Yeah, I think we should. Can you book us somewhere?" "Yeah, I will." So I started then frantically looking online, and I said to Deanna, "Where should we go to? You tell me the safest part of Croatia that we can go to right now." And she spent a bit of time thinking about it, and then she said, "Istria. I think Istria will be safe." So then it was a case of finding somewhere on Airbnb, and then we realised that Deanna's parents wouldn't be coming with us. They seemed adamant that they wanted to stay. So then there was quite a lot of negativity, and because I just couldn't understand, from my perspective as someone who was scrambling to protect my family, why they could be failing to cooperate. But what's interesting is that I don't think this was necessarily a JW thing. I think that it was kind of a generational thing almost, because I know a lot of others of their generation from the village were the same. They just wouldn't leave. They were like, no, this is my home and I want to see it fall down, or, you know, kind of this vigil, this morbid vigil that they wanted to have. Unfortunately, they snapped out of it, but not before we'd had to leave. We left that afternoon, and we arrived. Well, let me bring the map up. I've got a map to explain this. Thank you for bearing with me, by the way. Gosh, 711 and more super chats. Thank you. So sorry to hear about the earthquake, bud. Grateful you and the family are safe. I hope your home and the bunker are still intact. I'm happy to help you any way I can after all the help you've given all of us, my friend. Thank you so much, Eli. Eli's a patron. Many of you watching, I can see, are patrons. Catalin's a patron. Thank you, Catalin, for your super chat. Glenn Friedley, wow. Thank you so much, Glenn. Dan Tucker, thank you so much. Oh, nice to see Cliff there as well. Thanks, Cliff. So I've got, and I apologise if I'm missing any other super chats. I just realised I probably ought to. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you as well to Kelly. That's very kind. Let me get the screen share up. Let's see here. So this is Google Earth. You're looking at basically Croatia, fairly obviously. And if is it going to let me zoom in and zoom out? Yes, it is. So if I go over to, you can see there's Petrinja and there's Sisak. And so Petrinja's to the left there, there's Sisak. And where we live is sort of between where I'm pointing now, Novo Selo and Blinski Kut. Blinski Kut used to be where our post office was. But if I can maybe zoom in a little bit more, it might show up. So I don't know whether you can see my cursor, but where my cursor is, I'm rotating it around where our house is. So you can see roughly, hopefully, how far away we are from Petrinja. We're between 10 and 15 kilometers away from Petrinja, and we're equidistant from Petrinja and Sisak. Sisak is like the local, the local county, I don't know, capital or whatever you want to call it. It's the local administrative city. Petrinja is gorgeous, and what breaks my heart about Petrinja is that it's had such a troubled life, or the people there have had such a troubled life over decades. So this is obviously, we're not looking at post-earthquake, this is obviously Google Earth, so this is before the earthquake. But just where you see the word Petrinja, you can see kind of like a square there, a green square. And that's a beautiful, beautiful town square with these really thick oak trees. So full of character. Petrinja was actually under Serb occupation during the Croatian War of Independence. And it's where some of the heaviest fighting was of that particular war. So when you drive into Petrinja, or spend any amount of time going around Petrinja, even decades later, you're still going to see shell marks and evidence of destruction from when it was under Serb occupation and when there was fighting going on. So what really, really breaks my heart about this whole situation is that you have the older generation who can remember people being killed through war, and now you have the current generation who can remember people being killed through this earthquake. And currently, the death toll is 7. I don't know whether that will rise or not, but, you know, that's 7 too many, isn't it? And it really breaks my heart, because it's it's a beautiful place. We've been there so many times. We've taken the dog for walks there. It's a really gorgeous little pizza place where we were looking forward to taking our guests next time we have guests, because it was a little bit of a discovery for us. Oh, we'll bring our guests here. And you can see there the River Cooper, and where I'm rotating my cursor, there's even like a little beach there where the locals go swimming when it's hot. Just a gorgeous little town, and the thought of it being in rubble just breaks my heart. And we're going to look at some drone footage, I think, in a bit. But let me just zoom out. So you can see there, Petrinja. Hang on. Petrinja, and if I zoom in a little bit more, Komarevo is where we live. And we had to evacuate. I knew we weren't going to get far trying to go through Petrinja. So my plan was to drive north to Sisak, because in order to go pretty much anywhere, you have to really go through Sisak. There is another way to the east, but I was hoping to avoid that way because it would have added another half hour to our journey. So we drove north through Sisak, and what was interesting was I was expecting it to be difficult to get out of Sisak, because Sisak itself has suffered damage. We knew that the Roman bridge had suffered damage. It's still standing, apparently. There's a Roman bridge there. But we knew that it had been... It's a bridge that... It's called the Roman Bridge because it's built on the site of an actual Roman bridge in the style of the previous bridge. So that's why it's called the Rimsky Most, the Roman bridge. That we wouldn't have driven across this or anything. I'm just saying that I knew that that was damaged, and what my concern was that this bridge here would be damaged. Fortunately, it wasn't. And even if this bridge was undamaged, my concern was that this little bridge here would be damaged, because this, I mean, you look at it, this particular bridge, and you think, if I look at it the wrong way, it's going to fall down. So how it could survive an earthquake, I've no idea. But that is actually a crucial bridge for getting into and out of Sisak, and it was still up. So we were driving through Sisak, past rubble, because Sisak was hit quite heavily. The fuel stations were hit, so there were at least 2 fuel stations that were inoperable, and the fuel stations that were operable had long lines of traffic. Fortunately, I already had quite a lot of fuel, so I knew I could get out of Sisak before even needing to think about putting diesel in. And while we were driving out of Sisak, it was dark by this point. There was just this endless stream of vehicles from Zagreb going in the opposite direction. And it took a while to realize what was happening. I was expecting it to be hard to get out of Sisak. But what was happening was people from Zagreb were rushing to help. And because it was difficult to get in from the other side, they were going through Sisak to get into Petrinja. So we were driving along, and you can tell from the number plate where the cars are from, Zagreb, 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 Zagreb. And some people were coming in from even further away. We saw fire engines coming in from places like Rijeka. It was just an instant influx of help, to the point where they had to start telling people, don't come, because you're causing us more problems, because there's so many people coming. And that was one of the most extraordinary things I've seen, I think. Not people rushing to get out, but people rushing to get in, you know? Almost made me feel bad for leaving, but I had to evacuate my family, you know? So we managed to cross that little rickety bridge. Where is it again? There it is. And from then, we managed to make some headway. You can see there's this road here, which takes you quite rapidly, a fairly new road. Actually, is that the one? Might be a different road I'm thinking of. I think that might be the one. Anyway, you'll see my point. So there's Zagreb, and they felt the earthquake in Zagreb as well. And that's partly why there was such an influx, because people from Zagreb who've recently had their own earthquake to contend with, they thought, well, if it's this bad where we are, it's going to be devastation at the epicenter. So that's why they were rushing in. So we skirted around Zagreb, and then we were on, I think it would have been, I don't know which road it was, to be honest, but we headed out to the west towards Istria, and where we stayed initially for the night of the 29th was near, you can see the border here with Slovenia. Let me zoom in. Yeah, Buzet. Buzet was where we stayed. And yeah, the Airbnb host was very accommodating because we'd somehow managed to double book. But we made it work, and we woke up the next morning and there was a gorgeous view, by the way, across the mountains of Slovenia, because there's a Slovenian border. But we knew we could only stay one night because they double booked. So then the next day we headed further west, and where we are now is Porridge. So you can see Porridge there. And yeah, we found an Airbnb. It's very comfortable. But having arrived in Porridge, we then had the stress of not knowing what was going to happen with Diana's parents, because this brings me back to COVID, because the village was by now assembled on the car park that we had fled. When we got there, I think we were the first car on the car park, but that eventually became almost like a makeshift camp of everyone's cars going there so that they weren't near the houses as the quakes were continuing. And so you have a pandemic where you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be mingling. Yeah. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, my father-in-law having serious heart conditions, were unavoidably almost in a situation where they had to mingle with people from the village. The water was out, so there was no running water. It's the middle of winter, so they were cold. They were shivering in their car. And we were very, very concerned about them. Very concerned. And so I think I can stop sharing this map now. I reached out to a friend of mine and said, look, is there any way you can bring them? Because initially I thought, I'm going to have to drive back and kidnap. I'm going to have to kidnap my in-laws if I have to drag them out of there. In the end, what we decided to do, because a dear friend of ours who has, let's say, connections. I don't know whether he would identify as an ex-JW, but he has connections, shall we say, with the JW world. And he's just the sweetest guy. He's a really decent, giving, caring, kind, compassionate humanist, you know? And so he'd already said, if you need anything, let me know. And so I said, can you go and get my in-laws? And can you bring them to us? There's just one hitch. We haven't persuaded them to do it yet. But if we can persuade them, can you collect them and bring them to Istria? And he said yes. So then it became a case of trying to persuade them, having made these arrangements. And I should mention that another arrangement I made was for my video editor, who hasn't even started working for me yet. His contract began today on the 1st of January. Tibor, I think I can say his name now because he's on the credits for the tell-all video. He went to the bunker, and the reason why this microphone is here and my Osmo Action and a few other bits of equipment is because Tibor went into the bunker. He said, apart from the fact that R2D2 was on the floor and there was a broken glass on your desk, you wouldn't know that there'd been an earthquake. So that's encouraging to know. But he frantically started packing things so that I could have something to work with in Istria, and he put everything in a box ready to go with my in-laws. So that's how I'm able to basically be doing this live stream now, is because of Tibor. So thank you very much, Tibor. And finally, yes, finally our in-laws relented, and they're with us now. And I can tell you, when they arrived yesterday, it was the first time we've been properly able to breathe, because, you know, there's no solace in being safe and warm and in a secure building that isn't trying to fall down or kill you. There's no solace in that when you know that your loved ones are still shivering in a car park with no water, surrounded by potential COVID carriers. And that's no disrespect to my fellow villagers, by the way. It's just a fact, isn't it? There's a pandemic going on. So yeah, that was when we could finally breathe. Was when we were finally reunited with my in-laws, who are JWs. But I think they've seen these are unique circumstances. This is an emergency. I need to be able to help them for their own health, you know. And our dog's here as well, Bessie. It's so lovely to see Bessie. Just, you know, she's actually having, probably she thinks this is some kind of holiday, because where we're staying, there's like a forest nearby, and we went for a walk earlier. Because where we live, it's next to a main road, and it's hard to, she has to go on a lead and that kind of thing. But here she can just wander around as she wants, and I think she's having the time of her life, quite frankly. We also have another ex-JW who volunteered to take care of our cat. So yeah, everything's being taken care of. Another concern was looting, because there have been reports of looting in the area. But Deanna was actually showing me just before I came on, there's a team posting images, like a vigilante team, saying, if you try looting, you know, think twice, because we're out to stop you. So it's nice to see, again, people showing solidarity for people who they perhaps don't even know. And my friend who brought our in-laws here, he is immediately turning around. He immediately turned around to go back. He's been concerned as well about his family, because Zagreb is kind of in danger at the moment. It's in the vicinity. But he's working currently on a project in a nearby village that we've kind of pointed him towards, where a family has lost their entire house. And this is what I mean when I say we're lucky, because we have a house at the moment. We have a house to go back to. Some have lost their entire homes, and he is an architect by profession, and he's working on building them a new home. So what I've done in terms of pointing people to aid efforts is I've put a link in the description to, let me see if I can find it. Is it Solidarnost? Sorry, Solidana. So there's a link in the description to Solidana. Let me just see if I can bring up another screen share. There we go. There's a link in the description to Solidana, and we have actually spent some time, Diana and I, choosing this particular organisation, because unfortunately what you get when you have disasters like this is you get mismanagement of aid funds, and you get people who exploit the situation for whatever reason. So we've been getting mixed reports, even of like seemingly bona fide organizations like the Croatian Red Cross. We've been hearing reports on the ground of the Red Cross being overly bureaucratic, the Croatian Red Cross, that is, being overly bureaucratic and demanding people prove that they're affected before giving them the aid that they need. Deanna and I aren't in a position to independently verify that. But while there's any uncertainty, this Solidarno is the one organisation that we feel at the moment comfortable referring people to. And what I've said in the description is that as and when my friend is able to get organised with a proper kind of investment fund for the work he's doing and seems committed to doing, I'm going to be updating this video description with any links that he provides me with. So that's how we're doing things. Yes, we very much appreciate the incredible support and help that we're receiving. And as I'm doing this, I mean, you guys are bombarding me with even more super chats. And we're so grateful. It's a strange situation to, on the one hand, be admitting that yes, things are uncertain at the moment and we honestly don't know what's going to happen, while at the same time acknowledging that our situation is actually almost infinitely more favourable than the majority of people who live in that area and will be affected by what's going on. So while gratefully receiving this support and help, thank you. I think I speak for Deanna in saying, please consider supporting the work that's being done on the ground to help people who are far less well off than Deanna and I are. Because again, I'm receiving incredible support from my patrons, whereas the area as a whole, I think it's safe to say, has been neglected. It's one of the parts of Croatia that suffered the most during the war. And I think there's a lot of resentment because whereas cities like Zagreb and cities like Split and the tourist areas get bombarded with investment and get bombarded with infrastructure investment and that kind of thing. The areas, the backwater areas like Sisak and Petrinja, where people struggle daily to get by, they're being overlooked. And so what happened following the war in particular was that people had to rebuild on their own. They didn't really have any help. So they had to perhaps rebuild on the cheap. They had to rebuild with not much money. The way things are done in this part of the world, let me just close this down. The way things are done in this part of the world is that, you know, there's no real thought that goes into building things. There's no real planning. There's no real architecture per se. It's just that people build when they can and how they can. Thank you so much, by the way, to all these super chats. Thank you, Nora. Have I said Claire as well? It's hard for me to keep track of everyone. And Marilyn as well. People, thank you very much to all of you for sending in this. It's overwhelming, actually. But people build as they can, when they can, how they can. And what that leads to is buildings that are basically a hodgepodge, buildings that are just, you know, they could be strong, they could be not strong. Our own house is kind of a patchwork. So our house was built in maybe 2 or 3 different phases by different people, depending on what my in-laws' finances happened to be at that time, and usually that wasn't much. So probably most of the workers who built the majority of the house that the bunker is in were, I don't know, lacking in the expertise to build to the standards that you would expect. And yet our house is standing. Whether that's to do with how far away we are from the epicenter, 10, 15 kilometers, I'm sure will have made a difference. Or whether it's due to the fact that somehow they built an earthquake-proof house without really trying. I don't know. But the point is, we're lucky. Lots of people in our area are far less fortunate. Their houses were frankly doomed to begin with. Many of them, you know, when you drive around the area, you can see that people are just doing the best they can with the materials they have. So it's no surprise to me that this particular area would be hit severely by a 6.3, 6.4 magnitude earthquake, and we feel very fortunate. That's kind of what I wanted to say, but I'm wondering whether I ought to go through some of the comments. Take care, Lloyd. We need you and your family to keep up the fight. Thank you. Oh, the fight is continuing. Don't you worry about that. Let me just scroll up. If one clicks the arrow next to the Croatian flag on the Solidarno webpage, one can view the page in English. That's very true, Ali. Yeah. So you can get a translated version of that page. Yeah, so thank you, Amanda, for just reminding people that, you know, as wonderful as super chats are, a higher percentage will find its way to us than if you use the PayPal link, which is in the description. Although, you know, asterisk, please consider assisting the aid efforts with the Solidarno link. Yeah, this is probably one worth talking about, or at least along those lines. I can see it now. Lloyd will be doing a rebuttal on Dear Tony, talking about the current situation and earthquake in Croatia. They were the first on the scene with help, but it doesn't bother Tony. So there's a couple of things which I did mean to talk about, which I've missed. First of all, how you respond to this situation, or a situation like it, as someone who has been indoctrinated to think of an earthquake as a sign of Armageddon. That's probably worth talking about a little bit, even though I have spoken along those lines on my channel recently. And also JW Aid. We have seen a little bit of that in the case of my in-laws. So they've been inundated with offers for accommodation, come and stay with us, you know, that kind of thing. They also had, it must be said, warm meals delivered to them while they were in their car. And there's been, you know, their phone, I can tell you their phone hasn't stopped ringing while they've been here. So clearly people checking in on them. But as I've said many times before on my channel, you know, it kind of comes with strings attached when it's predicated on them believing, you know. So I can confirm that Deanna and I haven't had any interest at all in our well-being or whether we need help by our former brothers and sisters in CSAC congregation. And while I'm on that subject, I might as well mention that my father hasn't said a word. My sister, to her credit, and she won't like me saying this, but, you know, I really value the fact that my sister, as it was happening, was saying, irrespective of everything that's happened between us, you're welcome in my house. You know, there's a disaster in progress, there's an emergency. If you need to come and stay with us, my door is open to you. That was my sister. My dad expressed concern through my in-laws. So he wouldn't message me. He has my number. He has ways of getting through to me. But his way of dealing with it, and I say dealing with it, that's all it was, wasn't it? Oh, I'm going to deal with this situation. Was to just convey words of concern through the people in our household who happen to believe as he does, which means nothing. It means nothing. It would have been better if we'd heard nothing from him, because then at least there would be some grounds for thinking, oh, maybe he just didn't hear about it, But the fact that he knew about it enough to convey concern, if you can even call it that, to Diana's parents without saying anything to us, shows that he did know about it. He just doesn't have enough concern to contact me directly or to contact Diana directly, or for that matter, even meet his grandchildren who he's apparently concerned about. Still hasn't met them. So that's the love that never fails. That's the love that never fails right there. Now, in terms of how, and I know this wasn't really where you were going with this, Genie 712, Khan. It's just that you've prompted my my mind to delve into this. How do we interpret all this from the perspective of Jehovah's Witnesses? Earthquakes happening in one place after another. Well, first of all, it's not really a great prediction, is it? Earthquakes will happen in one place after another. Oh, you mean as opposed to not happening at all? Well, that's geologically impossible. Of course, earthquakes are going to happen. Oh, yes, in one place after another. Oh, in one place after another as opposed to just in one place and all at the same time. So yeah, if you think about it, it's a really crappy prediction, isn't it? It's basically saying people will continue breathing. It's not a prediction. It's just stating the obvious. But yeah, as I've said before, quite clearly, that even though it seems like there's an intensifying when you get earthquakes on top of a pandemic, if you think about it, it's just inevitable that that's going to happen at some point, because epidemics and pandemics have always been around, and there have been more deadly pandemics than the one we're facing at the moment. They've always been around, and earthquakes have always been around. So obviously at some point there's going to be a coming together of the earthquakes and the pandemics at some point in history, and it's happened. It doesn't mean Armageddon is imminent. It just doesn't. For all of the trauma and terror and chaos that 2020 in particular has wrought on humankind, it's still a far better time to be alive than, say, the Dark Ages. I'd rather be alive now than 1914. I think most of us would. Because whereas when the Spanish flu hit, another pandemic, they didn't have, modern science to rely on. With COVID, within the space of a year, within a matter of months, vaccines available. That's modern science. No amount of praying will achieve that. It's science. It's people using the scientific method to get results. So in terms of, when it comes to interpreting all of this through kind of a doomsday lens, I'm happy to go there. But I will say this, Jehovah, if he's out there, he's got a terrible aim, because despite the Zagreb earthquake that was a few months back, and despite multiple earthquakes now, here I am still alive and breathing. And actually, if anyone does want to go down that road, which I'm sure very few will, but there's always some nutters out there. If there is anyone who wants to think in terms of, oh, this is all retribution for Lloyd on his apostasy, have some respect. Have some respect, because there's 7 people dead. 7 people have died because of this. So it's not really even something to joke about, is it? And any kind of talk like that, it's really just a joke, isn't it? 7 lives have ended. People are without homes. It's a coincidence. It's a tragic, tragic coincidence. The Earth, the tectonic plates that move below us and have always moved below us don't have a clue what's going on up here. They don't have brains. There's no consciousness down there. They're not aware that Petrinja is there, or Zagreb is there, or San Francisco is there, or anywhere else, Fukushima, whatever. The Earth is just doing its thing, not even aware that there's life on the crust. These are forces that have been in place from the earliest beginnings of our planet, and they're not remotely interested in the devastation that's caused. Of course they're not. So the fact that people can be so infantile, and when I say people, I mean doomsday fear-mongering cults, can be so infantile as to suggest that all of this is God, all of this is some kind of sign, when these are forces that have been doing their thing for aeons before religion was even a thing. It's laughable, isn't it? It really is laughable that people can think that way. And again, it's kind of an insult to the people that have died. And I did just want to say one more thing about compassion, because this isn't the only traumatic thing that's happened in my life. I write in my book about losing my mother. That was a very traumatic experience. And one of the worst things that someone can say when you lose someone that you care about, and you'll be surprised how many people do say this, is they'll say, I know how you feel. I know how you feel because I've lost someone as well. And it took me going through the experience of losing my mother at the age of 21 and having people say that to me, to learn at the age of 21 that is not what you say. You just do not say that to people when they've lost someone. Oh, I've experienced it too. There's a very fine line between showing solidarity and empathy and expressing that you're hurting with someone as someone who can at least begin to understand the loss that they've faced. There's kind of a fine line between having that approach and coming across as saying, well, what you're experiencing now is just the same as or not as relevant as what I've experienced, which is a really, really crappy attitude to have. And I have seen a little bit of that attitude with, for all of the, look, overwhelmingly, the response has been incredible and continues to be incredible. And I'm not saying this to complain. I'm saying this kind of as a, just to learn as much as possible from this experience, You might live in a part of the world that gets more earthquakes than Croatia gets. You might. That's conceivable. You might have experienced strong earthquakes in your life. 6.4, I can tell you, pretty strong. You might have experienced a 6.4 or even a stronger earthquake. But no one experiences an earthquake in the same way, or it's very unlikely that they will. It's a little bit like saying, oh, you've been in a car crash. Oh, I've been in a car crash too. And actually, car crashes happen all the time. You know? Do you understand? Yeah, but all car crashes are different, aren't they? It greatly varies depending on where you are in the vehicle. Does the vehicle have airbags? What speed was the vehicle doing? What speed was the other vehicle doing? Were you on an interstate? Were you on just a normal road? All sorts of variables involved. And it's the same with earthquakes. It's the same with an earthquake. Were you in a building when it struck? What was the building made of? Were you in the building with your two children when the earthquake struck? Or were you outside looking at the building knowing that your two children were in? Do you understand? There's infinite variables. And I'm saying this as someone who, again, is looking at this event knowing that there are many people in that area who suffered far worse than I have. And I just would never dream of saying to them, oh yeah, I was there too. Been there, done it, got the t-shirt. I'd really want to avoid that kind of language, because no one experiences it the same. It's a traumatic experience. End of. We don't need to impose ourselves in that situation and say, oh yes, yeah, that was me, I've done that. It's not something that you just tick off. Everyone experiences painful situations differently. And again, I'm very, very lucky. And it's another one of those situations where you hope you'll learn from it, and you hope that when you encounter people in the future who go through this, your first reaction won't be, well, I was in the 2020 6.4 in Petrinja. Your first reaction will be, that's terrible. That's really, really bad. I'm so, so sorry. What happened? What was it like? How can I help you? You know? I hope you don't mind me kind of banging on about that, but I think it's good to learn lessons, you know? It's good to learn lessons when these things happen. Renato, nice to see you, mate. We don't know. It's very simple to just ask how they feel so you can learn something and show love. Very true. Sue says, pain, hurt, tragedy, other events are different for different people. We should have and show compassion for all. Very true. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your message. Thank you very much, Evelyn. Thank you for tuning in. Wow, look at all of these messages. I don't get that on my live streams often, just people sending hearts. You know, that's good. I kind of understand that, because sometimes you just don't know what to say, do you? You just want to show some solidarity, and that's fine. That's good. It's good. It's like that spectacle that will never leave me of the flow of traffic going in the other direction to help the people of Petrinja, you know. And I come from a religion that says that sort of thing is impossible. I come from a religion that says worldly people will never look out for each other. They're all selfish. They're all greedy. They'll all leave you for dead. They're not interested in helping you. Everyone's greedy. Everyone's depraved. Everyone's worthless. Only in Jehovah's organization do people love each other. Well, let me tell you. The 29th of December 2020 taught me that there is no love in the organization, at least as far as I could tell from the way my father reacted, whereas there's an abundance of love in Satan's system of things, as the witnesses think of it. Thanks. Deanna's brought me a whiskey. Thank you very much. I'm going to really try to make it through without crying. There's an abundance of love in Satan's system of things. There really, really is, you know? There's people who want to help their fellow human being just because it's the right fucking thing to do. And there you go, I've sworn now. I've broken my rule of not swearing. Sometimes you need to swear, though. There are times when that word applies, and that was one of them. Motorway to Roswell, you need that whiskey today. Good man, thank you. Humbles 19. So glad you and your family are safe. Someone reminded me last night that family aren't always blood. It's the people who are there for you. And yeah, I'm going to say his name, Yanko. Yanko, I hope you don't mind me saying your name, but it was Yanko who drove my in-laws. Such a loving guy, you know? And he's one of the people who apparently deserves to be crushed under a fireball when Armageddon comes. And he was there rendering aid to 2 JWs who were in danger to bring them to safety. Worldly people came racing to offer help and support to me when 3 of my family members died. Wow. Not JWs. There's love there, isn't there? There's love all around us. There's people just willing to do the right thing. Indeed, Amanda, go Satan's system of things. I do need that whiskey, actually. This is definitely more intense. Again, this is a situation. I hope you'll excuse me where I've just not really thought about it that much. I've not been following the news media about it, to be completely honest with you. We were scrambling for information today because we've just been kind of shell-shocked from it all. And then we realised, Deanna and I, oh, actually, I'm going to have to talk about it and say knowledgeable things about it shortly on the live stream. Most of what you've heard me say, I kind of knew already. But yeah, so the stats, for example, on the ongoing earthquakes. But yeah, it's been harder. It's been harder to talk about it than I thought it would be, to be honest. Lancer says, such a loss of the organisation for the January of 2020. There have been many worldly people who have gone above and beyond to help their fellow man. Very true. Very true. And imagine doing that as well. Imagine rushing into the disaster zone of an earthquake, getting in your car and driving towards the earthquake where you know there are unstable buildings about to fall down at any moment. That was another thing that we found out today. Actually, let me show you the drone footage, because there's still 765 of you here for some reason. Let me see if I can get another screen share up. Well, this won't work. Let's see what I can do here. I think you might be able to see this. Let's go back to the beginning. Let me just double check that that's showing on your screen. No, it isn't. Okay, so in that case, let's come out of this and do a different screen share. Stop screen. I really hate doing screen shares. I must apologise, and that whiskey's starting to kick in. There we go. So this is actually the Evening Standard, as in, I think the London Evening Standard is what it used to be called, or was called at some point. And this is the drone footage of Petrinja. So hopefully you'll understand what I mean about, you can see there the devastation, and there's the wooded kind of town square that I was telling you about with the oak trees. And what's interesting is that you can see there are buildings that are in piles of rubble, but there are other buildings, many other buildings, in fact, that appear to be still standing. But just because they're standing doesn't mean they'll always be standing, because many of these buildings have actually been, are now structurally unstable. So, that one's definitely going to have to come down, I think. So what's happening is there are teams going round painting red crosses on buildings that are condemned, that need to come down, whatever the owners think, whatever. I mean, you could have been living in your house all your life, and there are some cracks in the wall, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to fix this somehow, I don't know how. And someone paints a red cross on your house, and it's like, no, sorry, this needs to come down. You know, it's a risk to public health for us to allow this building to exist, even if it's got all of your belongings in, even if it's been passed down from generation to generation, this building needs to come down. So that's been happening. There's a beautiful music school in Sisak, so not in Petrinja, in Sisak, that will have to come down. Actually, it's one of the places where whenever we do have guests, we take them on a little tour of Sisak and we take them to the music school, because there's a little story to it. It used to be a synagogue right up to World War II, basically, when the Jews were obviously in that part of Europe caught up in the Holocaust. They were killed, basically, and they basically had their synagogue repurposed, used by the state for whatever, having all been annihilated. And it eventually became the Sisak Music School. So it's kind of bittersweet that on the one hand it was being used for something beautiful, to teach young people how to play the piano. And I remember visiting there with some friends when we were still Jehovah's Witnesses, and I had a friend who was a grade 8 pianist, and we persuaded them to let us, actually they didn't take much persuading, they allowed him to come up to the main auditorium and play on the grand piano, play some of his, I think it was Rachmaninoff he was playing, and absolutely gorgeous building, lots of history. And a bittersweet history in terms of the Holocaust and the fact that it used to be a synagogue. That's going to have to be torn down. There's a video of someone going round pointing to all the cracks in the ceiling and saying, you know, this is the saddest day of my life, you know, because this is where so many children have learned to play the piano and were learning to play the piano, and now it's going to have to be torn down, you know. So I just wanted to include that story. It's not always about the people losing their homes. It's also, it impacts people in far more profound ways, you know. Who knows what difference it will make to have people's education disrupted in that way, you know. Who knows what ripples that will create in people's lives. So just a tragic situation. And again, so much I could say about it and may say at some point in the future, but I kind of hope that I've at least begun to do it justice. And yes, loss of history, exactly. That was part of it, more than just a music school. It was part of the history of the area, and it was a living testament to the tragedy of the Holocaust, the fact that this place of worship literally got ripped from the Jewish community at the time that they were pronounced less than human, you know. Yes, it's culture and history lost. It's things that can't be replaced. This is what I'm trying to convey, I guess, and you've done it far more eloquently than I can at the moment. Yeah, it's not just the shattered lives and the day-to-day life that's been disrupted. You can't put a price on culture and history, can you? Once it's gone, it's just gone. It's just gone. And it's really sad. Jenny Smith says, I remember the absolute kindness of worldly people when my sister had a house fire and lost everything, got out safely with baby and pets. The kindness of our community was immense. And again, these are people who Jehovah's Witnesses believe deserve to die imminently at Armageddon. So scary just watching the mayor's press conference interrupted by, that wasn't an aftershock, that was the main thing. And this is the complicated thing, because at times of tragedy, you look to the experts, and everything we've been hearing here in Croatia is that the experts are just as confused as everyone else. Because usually you have a big earthquake and then you have an aftershock. And what we've had are two big earthquakes on the 28th, the first of which woke us up in the morning. So we woke up, or was it in the middle of the night? That's it. It was in the middle of the night. I said to Deanna, it's an earthquake. And we both rushed into the children's bedroom, and the house was still shaking when we were in their bedroom, and then it subsided, and then there was another one a few hours later. I think I was actually having a nap at the time, trying to claw back some of my sleep that I'd missed due to the previous earthquake. Those were around 5 on the Richter scale, and then when you see the mayor giving the press briefing, that's the 6.4 that they're caught up in. That's when the 6.4 struck. That was the main quake, in other words. But we've also been getting, on an almost hourly, if not every few minutes basis, more and more quakes. I said before, 43 today, and that was before I went on air. There may have been some while I've been talking. How do you explain this? It's the seismologists are basically putting their hands up and saying, we don't know. It's messed up. Yeah, they're even saying, this could be going on for months, which is why, as I said at the beginning, we don't know in terms of the channel and in terms of our home. We don't know what happens next. We just don't. There's no certainty at all. For all I know, I might have filmed my last video in the bunker. I mean, it's still standing the last I checked. Our house is still standing. And actually, we had some minor damage to the chimney, which it was literally the top piece was dangling precariously after the 6.4, and our neighbour very kindly got up on the roof and took it off so that it wasn't going to fall on the roof if there was another earthquake. That's mostly it, I think. We haven't inspected it, obviously, for cracks or anything. But the question I have is, how many earthquakes can a building like ours, which, as I said, is kind of like a patchwork quilt of various different stages of construction, how many earthquakes can it withstand? And do we want to be guinea pigs in that experiment? So there's all sorts of decisions that need to be made, and that's before we even get to a point where there's any kind of finality on the situation, which there isn't at the moment, because the earthquakes are basically continuing. We don't know whether we're just going to have to leave the area permanently. As things stand, we are in an Airbnb until the 8th of January, and today I think we reached a decision, Deanna and I, to start investigating what our rental options are for maybe the next 3 months. So basically moving here for a few months, committing to it regardless of what happens, and then reassessing the situation at the end of that period. So yeah, it's all up in the air at the moment. I wish I could tell you all exactly what's happening, but I honestly don't know. I just don't know. But again, we're the lucky ones. We really are. So much uncertainty, indeed. Let me I think I'm going to about wrap it up there. Yeah, insurance is a tricky one. Basically, no one's really insured in Croatia. We were just getting to the point where having invested so much in our home, because it's only now sort of getting to the point of where the cost, what's the word? Where the cost risk analysis favours insurance. We've only kind of recently, over the last year or so, reached that point where we can start thinking, even though it's like a patchwork quilt, is this something that we should insure? And we were just kind of starting that conversation, really. But most people don't have insurance where we live. What whiskey are you having? Well, there's two downstairs, and I'm afraid they're just cheap ones. So there's a Ballantine's and there's a Johnny Walker Red. And if I had to guess, probably this is the red, which I think is perfectly fine. I know everyone raves about the black, but for me, granted I'm no whiskey connoisseur, I would struggle to do a blindfold test for them, to be honest. I think that's about it. We apostates here in the UK would love to have you back. I'm not so sure you speak for all apostates in the UK. If you want to come, that is. Boris, maybe not then. Yeah. I think that's about it. I think we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? We are so sorry, Lloyd. You almost feel like family because of broadcasts. We have your back. Maybe just a very quick word. Johnny Walker Black is where it's at. It's a good whiskey. I'm just not convinced it's all that different from the red, to be honest. In terms of the channel, the earthquake has happened at a time where I am being phenomenally supported. 600 patrons currently, so that we've been expanding, we're growing, we've taken on a video editor, and so from that point of view, it's happened sort of at a time when we can, as to the extent possible, hopefully weather the storm. In terms of uploads, I'm going to do my level best to create content here in Istria that is engaging and interesting. I obviously won't have the bunker for a while, obviously. There will be some voicemail videos going up over the next month or so that were filmed in the bunker pre-earthquake. There are two of them that I've edited that are going to go up in, say, the next week or so. And Tibor, my video editor, has 4 that he's going to edit. So there's about 6. Yeah, there's 6 voicemail videos that are going to go up in the next few weeks that will show me in the bunker, but they're all pre-earthquake. It might be a little bit confusing when you're watching the channel. Oh, Lloyd's back in the bunker. Everything looks fine. No, this was these are old videos, I'm afraid, or pre-recorded. So there's 6 voicemail videos that are going to go out. Tibor and myself are going to do our very, very best to keep the content coming. Whether it's sushi, whether it's voicemails, whether it's original videos filmed here, The next project I want to do is the 10 worst of 2020. That's going to have to be filmed here, either in the Airbnb or there's a beautiful forest nearby. I might be a little bit creative with that. And in January, I already had scheduled my rebuttals to the annual meeting. So that's my next order of business. Carry on working. I'm giving myself this weekend off. So Saturday, the 2nd of January and Saturday, the 3rd of January, I will be indisposed, trying to get my head together and trying to unwind as much as possible. And then on Monday, the 4th, back to work. Back to work. So, yes, expect... I don't know, actually, I don't know. I can't tell you what to expect. I can only tell you that you can't keep a good apostate down. And I am going to carry on working from Istria. So look out for more uploads for 2021. I think I tweeted, I did tweet recently, just a few hours ago, that December was an all-time record for views on the channel. 738,000 views we got just for December. And it's that sort of increased interest in my work that has made it possible, along with the support on Patreon, for me to justify bringing in a video editor. So all of this has kind of fallen together at a time when we kind of need that extra manpower. We need that extra, I know manpower sounds like an awful word, doesn't it? We need that extra labour, that extra workforce. So, yeah, the Lloyd Evans channel survives another day, and 2021 will be hopefully a very exciting and interesting year ahead. We're all okay, we're all safe, we're all well, and we are all deeply, deeply and profoundly appreciative of all of your kind thoughts of solidarity and your support as well. We really do appreciate it, and I speak for Deanna as well. So thank you so much to all of you. I hope this live stream has been remotely coherent, and I'll leave you all to enjoy, hopefully, a very happy. Take care, everyone. It's an encore. I pressed the wrong button. You see, I'm hopeless. I really am hopeless. That was a really good outro as well. Happy New Year, everyone. I'm ending the broadcast. Take care.